Hey guys, Zane here with another One Take review, and today I wanted to talk about the new Cave-In album, Heavy Pendulum. Heavy Pendulum is the latest studio album from hard rock slash metal band Cave-In, a group who have been consistently with a cult following by their side, one of the most well-respected rock bands out there within the world of alternative music since their debut in the 90s and especially into the 21st century. The outfit's latest effort sees them release another record that continues to embrace a more traditional metal sound as they sort of continue to, at least to some extent, distance themselves from the hardcore or post-hardcore influences that they once dabbled with. I mean, seriously, the heavy stoner and sludge metal influences that are on Heavy Pendulum are very abundant. While they don't downtune themselves to go into tunings that logically probably shouldn't exist, like some of their peers do, Cave-In still create these heavy and thick guitar riffs and generally very sludge-based songs that move with the same speed and the same power as Godzilla. The band pull off these heavy and lengthy riffs and songs pretty well overall, and while I don't think it's the best execution of it that you will hear all year, especially not within the past several years, which has seen a barrage of excellent stoner and sludge metal records coming out, it still is far from mediocre, and Cave-In, they do justice to the sound. Heavy Pendulum is very well performed overall, with great guitar riffs and the trading off of vocals between the members of Stephen Brodsky, Adam McGrath, and Nate Newton is excellent and ultimately gives a sense of wholeness to the album. The album does have its flaws, which is something I will touch on in a moment, but there's still an incredible amount of passion being put into the performance work here, and the fact that Cave-In can still play this well over 25 years into their career is frankly incredible, and it kind of makes you feel like that hiatus that they took in the mid to late 2000s was maybe a bit healthy for them, as they're still going strong today. I mean, you've got some bands that burn out after a couple of years creatively, and you've got other bands that manage to go literal decades without ever really wearing thin musically and changing up their style just enough to feel like the same band making the same music, but at the time, every record feeling different, and Cave-In definitely fall in the latter category. Now, Heavy Pendulum does have a decent amount of flaws as well, the primary one being the fact that the songs here, or at least a good chunk of them, are simply way too long and way longer than they really need to be. A number of tracks like Blinded by a Blaze, for example, could have been major highlights on the record overall, as they begin in a very promising manner with, again, heavy guitar riffs and solid metal structure that you would expect from stoner and sludge metal, but then they begin to overstay their welcome, and then they drone on, and then the next thing you know, the song is almost 6.5, 7 minutes, which wouldn't be bad if they were really bringing something new to the table at some point in the song, but these tracks often begin to repeat themselves after a while and really make you wonder what warrants them being as long as they are. Ironically, the best song on the album is the final track, Wavering Angel, which is over 12 minutes long and easily clocks in as the longest song on Heavy Pendulum. But the reason that song works so well in and out of context is that it is very progressive. It's easily the most progressive song on the record in nature. I mean, things start out slow, then they get upbeat, then they get kind of harkening back to that post-hardcore influence I was talking about before, then it gets sludgy, and there's just so many influences being thrown into that song that it doesn't feel like 12 minutes, it feels like an average 4.5, 5-minute song because it's so consistently enjoyable. Meanwhile, you've got other songs on the record that I mentioned before that are only 6.5 minutes, 7 minutes, that feel like an eternity because after the halfway point, they don't bring any new concepts, ideas, or any even new interesting execution of the same ideas to the table. But then again, the length of the album in and of itself is a problem, not just individual songs. Cave-In don't bring a wide enough variety of ideas to Heavy Pendulum to really warrant over an hour of listening, and by about the halfway point on the record, it becomes apparent that Cave-In have decided that they don't really want to do much besides just a sort of, again, very heavy, sludgy, dense style of metal. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a great sound that can be mastered, and it has been mastered in the past, but at the same time, when your record's over an hour long and the only thing breaking up this same sound being repeated over and over for the most part is a couple of, if I'm being honest, pointless ambient interludes, it becomes a bit of an issue. Again, the band do the sound well. Never let it be said that Cave In aren't talented musicians. They are, and they really haven't mastered, but definitely pull off a sort of sludge metal style incredibly well. It's just the fact that I can watch most of your average feature film by the time I finish this album, and that would probably grip me more. So overall, Heavy Pendulum is a record that is solid in concept and theoretically in execution that simply suffers from droning on for way longer than it really needs to be. If this album were cut down to a solid 45 or 50 minutes, I may have less qualms with it and perhaps even give it a higher rating. But the fact that when you're listening to this album from front to back, you could easily listen to two different albums that would probably have significantly more variety in their music, it kind of just shows how Cave In could have easily presented more ideas, or at least a slight change up in style at some point on the record, to really make things feel a bit more alive overall. Nonetheless, though, Heavy Pendulum isn't actually a bad album. It's a very good album, and I do recommend it, except maybe just cherry pick a few songs of your choice off of it instead of listening to the whole thing from beginning to end, as I don't think it's really worth it in that regard. But nonetheless, Heavy Pendulum, 3.5 stars out of 5, and with that being said, that's the end of this review, and I'll see you guys in the next one.